the work here happened across 2020. It's been under different working groups, but we clustered them together. And I'll give a quick overview of IPFS on the web first. So the most important thing that happened to IPFS ecosystem browser-wise, in my opinion, is subdomain support on our gateways, working by default on our canonical public gateway, on a localhost gateway. It's important because now we are fully compatible with the security model on the web. Each content route identified by a CID gets its own secure sandbox in a browser out of the box without any third-party extensions. It's just how the web already works. And we now aligned our security policy on the web with how browsers work. So each content route gets own cookie store, permissions are scoped to the specific content route, storage. That solves also a huge developer experience pain that people had with static website generators using relative paths. All those problems go away. And the cool thing about subdomain gateways is that it's a drop-in replacement. So you can use them as a path-based ones, and you will get redirected to the proper subdomain. In a web browser context, additional pain point was resource usage. People have had problem when they wanted to use JS IPFS in their website for multiple contexts, maybe across the tabs or maybe across different apps within the same origin. It's now possible to reuse the single IPFS instance across different browser contexts. Mostly that will be within single origin across tabs. However, you may use those NPM modules for passing and delegating IPFS commands from different browser contexts other than the regular browser. We've also improved browser import over HTTP API. It's important because a variety of HTTP-based deployments exist in production right now. And there was a ceiling on how big of a file you are able to import over HTTP API. Now that ceiling is gone, you can import huge files, 4 gigabytes or more, on a devices with a little memory without any double buffering. And additional perk of that is that of that work that happened this year is that you get a real-time progress on those uploads when you do IPFS add over HTTP API when you use IPFS HTTP client, and that already shipped, so feel free to play with it. And now will be a bunch of important firsts for IPFS in web browsers. So the first time the IPFS URI was resolved by a mainstream browser happened this year. Opera Mobile shipped support for IPFS URI. You could enter it in the address bar and it would resolve to a public gateway. It's a mobile client, so it was backed by a public gateway. Nevertheless, it's a huge milestone to have out-of-the-box support for our URI in a mainstream browser. And shortly around that time, Brave was the first browser to include one-click install of our browser extension. And a part of that work was also blessing our browser extension with access to TCP and UDP sockets, which meant Brave was the first browser to have a full IPFS node running in a browser process. It had a built-in HTTP gateway. Was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, Google deprecated some of the APIs that we've used for these experiments. So we switched gears, and for the second half of the year, we looked into a way to provide native support in Brave that does not require running any browser extension. So Brave is the first browser that has URI support that's backed by a full IPFS node. So the first time you load IPFS URI in Brave nightly, it will ask you, hey, do you want to run IPFS node, or do you want to resolve this IPFS resource using a third-party public gateway? And it works. So it's super exciting because it landed in Brave nightly just like folks on the previous talks mentioned this month, and you can play with it. It will probably be refined, so it's not the best UX right now, but it will be much better when it ships in hopefully January. Huge milestone, URI and full IPFS node in the web browser. And we did not stop with that. We want to make it useful across all vendors. So we started a partnership with Igalia, Igalia are a dev shop responsible for such useful web platform features as CSS grid. So we've been working with them on known problems that are protocol agnostic, that would, if fixed, would benefit everyone, but also would remove any roadblocks for IPFS presence in the web platform. And we focused around our first collaboration around Protocol Handler API and identified a bunch of roadblocks toward adoption of our URI schemes. And now, at the end of 2020, URIs are officially recognized by international standards bodies, are safe listed in Chromium, so you can register them without Web Plus prefix. And we also unified behavior of localhost gateways across vendors and browser contexts. So it's ongoing work, but patches already landed in Firefox. And you can see here, when you load DNS link website from a local gateway, it's marked as a secure context. It's a huge deal, which means DNS link websites loaded from your local IPFS node behave the same as you would load them from the old school HTTPS server. And you got access to all web APIs. So that's a huge deal, and we'll be continuing collaboration with Igalia going forward. Pinning services API spec landed. And just like mentioned by the core implementations working group, this is a step towards enabling people to easily delegate data persistence to a third party. We are working with pinning services, existing pinning services, and we hope to see more of them to implement this API. Support for this API will also land in Go IPFS 0.8, and in the future, hopefully in the beginning of 2021, it will land in Web UI and IPFS desktop out of the box. So be sure to play with it when you see it landing somewhere. And during the year, we've improved our end-to-end testing, release automation. I'll just keep it brief. So Web UI is now tested against Go IPFS and JS IPFS in the CI process, so we catch any regressions early, and IPFS desktop, including signing for macOS and Windows and notarization. All that stuff got automated. So you may see our team be able to deliver more features because all this stuff got automated and no longer will take our time. And I believe now it's time to talk about IPFS GUIs.
Speaking of IPFS GUIs, we could talk about the changes that we made to IPFS GUIs over the last year, but it would take about 45 hours. So we're just going to run through a couple of the highlights. Revamped IPFS Companion. We made so many changes to Companion this year, which is awesome. Reworked all of the prefs. That made a huge difference, but added new menu items for shareable snapshot and IPFS path links where those are appropriate. So those appear in the menu. You'll see that in the animation. Really just streamline the UI everywhere. There's a more useful welcome screen. You can get to that by clicking the cube in your browser drop-down menu. Also added manual opt-in and opt-out lists in prefs. You can still do this on a per-site basis with the toggle, but you can also do that straight from prefs if you just want to paste in a big old list. The prefs get their own easier-to-use page that's consistent across all browsers. And we also fixed the peculiar but extremely annoying case where you had error messaging in Firefox specifically, which forced lowercase CIDV zeros when you paste them in. So we gave Companion a very specific error message indicating when you might have done that. Next slide, please. And really just onboarding improvements galore. I mean, that sounds sort of glib, but for real, we spent most of our focus in 2020 doing things that were going to make it easier to get started using IPFS, no matter what your intent was with IPFS. So that focused on a lot of onboarding enhancements to anything that was IPFS that has a GUI on it. In particular, web UI and desktop. Lots of accessibility improvements across the board, better map and table data on the peers page. And we've also got some more peers page improvements that should be hitting early in the new year, just as soon as we wrap those up. CLI tutor mode, which was actually given to us by a wonderful community contributor. So if you want to learn the CLI through IPFS desktop, there's some shortcuts for that, better breadcrumbs with drag and drop and all sorts of other good stuff. And then just lots of other little bits of UI happiness. Also improve the gateway directory pages that you'll see anywhere and everywhere that you use IPFS through a gateway. Dist.ipfs.io is easier to use, also works on your phone, and like so many more other things. Next, please. And this is sort of boring, but it's actually really important. We started coordinating issue tracking across 13 GUI related repos, which means that we've got both a better tactical response to things that break or change, as well as a better strategic response. We had a 48-hour maximum response time on all new issues, a weekly triage for a synchronous triage so that we made sure nothing fell through the cracks. But the really good thing about this is coordinating all of these repos together at once gave us visibility into the most important work streams for 2021, such as the next slide, please. This is going to be so cool. And it's coming very, very soon, is full pinning service support in desktop and web UI. So this is the pinning services API baked into web UI and desktop. So you can add any pinning service that uses this pinning services API. You can use web UI and desktop to pin files to your local node, your pinning services of choice, or both. There are nice little indicators in the file screen so that you can know what is and isn't pinned. And future releases, soon, TM, will include some rules-based auto uploading, which is going to be super, super convenient. I could tell you so many other things, but I think I would get yanked off the stage. So just a big old shout out to everybody who helped us this year, and look forward to 2021.